Health organizations warn of a massive surge of Ebola in Liberia as African nations prepare to send in medical and military teams. Al-Shabaab claims responsibility for an attack in Somalia. And ethnic communities in South Sudan showcase their unique culture. This is CCTV Africa. Hello, welcome to Africa Live with me, Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program, a likely sigh of relief from investors as Tanzania decides to halt a review of mining contracts. And in your 2015 AFCON qualifier news, Algeria prepare to take on Mali. Our headline story, and the World Health Organization is expecting a surge of new Ebola cases in Liberia. There are fears that they could number in the thousands. The World Health Organization says the country's health services simply cannot cope with containing the epidemic. Carol Oyola has that story.
Health workers are assisting thousands stranded at centers like this one, but it's not enough. The World Food Programme says efforts need to be stepped up at least 3 or 4 times. The World Health Organization expects things to get much worse. Conventional methods to control the outbreak are, quote, not having an adequate impact here. More than 2,000 people have died of Ebola in affected countries. A huge surge in cases is expected in Liberia. Added to that, a food crisis.
They are finding it difficult to get food because they are not allowed to get out. And so as a result, we are providing food to them.
The African Union met on Monday and urged for all travel bans to be lifted. Many in Liberia say the restrictions have already taken their toll.
The main worry is how long are we going to be quarantined? And we don't know when they're going to lift the ban on us as we have been quarantined. And for now, I'm thinking how soon, because we need to go back to work. We have been quarantined and we are not working. We don't have means of earning money for ourselves now.
The World Food Programme is also concerned that restrictions will push Liberia to the brink of a food crisis. Carol Oyola, CCTV.
Well, the African Union met on Monday to discuss a collective approach to the Ebola crisis, and several nations pledged their support in the form of medical expertise and funds. Now, Girum Chala is live for us from Addis Ababa. He tells us more on the deployment of Africa's medical and military teams. Girum, when exactly are these medical and military teams supposed to head in?
Thanks, Beatrice, and welcome to the African Union headquarters. Now, as you've said yesterday, there was a decision that this military / medics team should be on the ground as soon as possible. As we have heard from the African Union Social Affairs Commissioner, Commissioner Kaloko, he told us that the mission should be leaving on Wednesday, but we're seeing that that is not going to be the case, because this is a collective kind of mission, you know, all of them coming from different parts of the continent for this particular mission. So the medics, we have heard, are more or less, you know, complete. The doctors, the nurses, and the laboratory technicians. On the military aspect of it, I think they need to make some kind of preparations, but the temporary date for them to leave to West Africa, to those 3 affected countries, is going to be on Wednesday, and we'll see if that's going to happen or not.
Right, Girum, they're expected to depart on Wednesday, but which countries exactly are sending the teams? Where will they be deployed?
Well, so far we have heard contributions were made from countries like South Africa, Uganda, the DR Congo, Nigeria itself, and the others. Like I said earlier, these are medical teams and military teams, so there are many countries which are going to be part of it. So far we have heard the team is going to contain 100+ military and medics people to be deployed in that part of the continent. Not all of them are obviously going to be there on the ground, 20 or 25 of them at once, and then it's going to be, a round trip kind of thing, 25 of them working at one time and the others will be replacing them. So, those countries, I've said, have contributed. The people, and also in material and money-wise as well. We've heard, like I said, countries like South Africa contributed in kind and money as well for the mission to be successful in Western Africa region. So the first team will be leaving, like I said, on Wednesday, and the other one will be after a month. So it will be continuing in this fashion for the coming perhaps 6 months' time, in which the African Union plans to contain the virus in that 6 months period. And we'll see again if they're going to be successful in that regard or not.
All right, Girum Chala for us there at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. Meanwhile, the International Federation of the Red Cross continues its fight against Ebola. It has convened a two-day conference in the Senegalese capital, Dakar, to discuss the Ebola crisis. The aim of the meeting is to come up with ways to use media to raise awareness both regionally and at the grassroots level. The meeting is also aimed at mobilizing regional resources and ensuring the free movement of people and goods across affected borders. The organization plans to release a list on Wednesday of recommendations to fight Ebola.
We believe that this forum we have for 2 days will come out not only with a communique, the usual stuff, but a plan of action where each and every institution and community media house will have a responsibility and a role to play and be accountable to their own communities, and also sensitize their governments and people in terms of how we deal with this and to kick Ebola out of West Africa and Africa as a whole.
It's very challenging, and UNICEF's role is to take this very complex topic and to simplify it so that everybody can understand it, so everybody understands a simple method of keeping themselves, their family, and their community safe.
Well, misinformation remains one of the biggest threats to combating the virus. Here's what you need to know.
The stigma of Ebola continues to be one of the biggest threats to effectively containing the outbreak. There's a lot of misinformation regarding the virus. So how exactly does Ebola work? Well, it does not spread through food, air or water. Direct contact between a victim is needed, most commonly through bodily fluids. So measures to avoid contracting the virus are fairly straightforward. Firstly, hygiene and disinfectant are crucial. Secondly, avoid coming into contact with people already infected. That's why getting victims into early isolation is so important. But with no cure, treatment is difficult. It's very important to keep an eye out for the symptoms. Early detection could save lives. Initial symptoms are flu-like and can present themselves between 2 and 21 days after infection. They include high fever, headaches, joint and muscle pains, sore throat and weakness. These symptoms may not mean Ebola, but it's important to get checked out immediately. After that, symptoms become more severe and include diarrhea, vomiting, and eventually organ failure, lesions, and severe bleeding. In these cases, contact a medical professional immediately to have the victim evacuated. Maria Galang, CCTV.
And it's coming up to 9 minutes past the hour. We'll take a short break here on Africa Live. But coming up, Al-Shabaab claims responsibility for an attack in Somalia. And ethnic communities in South Sudan showcase their unique culture. This is CCTV Africa. Cameroon is claiming fresh victories against Nigerian militant group Boko Haram. The army says it has killed more than 100 militants during an attempted incursion into its territory. Boko Haram operates in northeastern Nigeria, but in recent months it has expanded its raids into Cameroon. The country earlier this year pledged its support to Nigeria to combat the militants on its borders, and since then the army has conducted several operations both in Nigeria and Cameroon. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch has warned that both Boko Haram and local vigilante groups are using children in their armed conflict. It claims boys and girls are being abducted, sexually assaulted and used for attacks and spying. Susan Mongeli with more on that development.
Who will care for us? The title of a new report from Human Rights Watch on Nigeria. It details how boys and girls as young as 10 are being forcibly recruited by both Boko Haram and vigilante groups. The children end up cooking, spying, and even fighting.
Children are increasingly in the line of fire. Interviewees told Watchlist that they had seen children as young as 14 years old working alongside Boko Haram to carry ammunition, set houses alight. They had also seen children as young as 13 years old among civilian self-defense militia. Boko Haram abducts boys and girls, and in particular forces boys to join their ranks or face death.
Boko Haram has attacked several schools. It's believed at least 414 students, teachers and other civilians have been kidnapped since 2012. More than 200 of those are the Chibok schoolgirls taken by Boko Haram earlier this year.
We remain resolute in continuing the call for the government to rescue the girls and bring them back safe and alive.
Dozens of boys were kidnapped just months after the Chibok abductions. They too are still missing. Susan Mongeli, CCTV.
And we are continuing with our special series in Baidoa, southern Somalia. A biting drought is apparently escalating and has caused massive displacement. Camps for the internally displaced have been flooded in the last 2 months in the town and their resources are stretched. Mohammed Hirmoge has been in Baidoa and files this story.
Thousands of fresh IDPs live in different camps like this in Baidoa. Most of them fled here due to a biting drought that's caused hunger and to escape conflicts in southern Somalia regions. Many are elderly and even sick. There's been no food supplies since they arrived. And each day, their prospects for survival gets even bleaker.
I came from Hudur. The drought has gotten worse there. All our animals have died. We are left with nothing, no food, no water, and not only that, fighting and conflicts began. We had to flee.
We've walked for long hours, days and nights, hoping we would at least find safety and food here. But here we are, and we've got nothing. Yes, it is safe, but to survive, we need food supplies.
Thousands have been displaced from their homes. It's been a long trek, they say, in search for not only food and water, but also safety for their children.
It took us more than 10 days to arrive here. For those with children, even more. The drought has affected the entire Bakol region. And in Hudur, where I come from, it's not only the drought. There's fear caused by fighting and conflict.
But even as the fresh IDPs arrive, many others already put up in various camps, most of them survivors of the 2011 famine. Yet, with no supplies here, these IDPs might move to Mogadishu. The situation in southern Somalia, where most of these people come from, still remains quite unsafe. Continued armed conflict and a biting drought has forced many to flee from their homes. The humanitarian situation in this region continues to deteriorate. Aid organizations have warned these are indicators for a possible recurrence of the 2011 famine that has killed more than 250,000 people. The UN says consolidated aid appeal remains critically underfunded at 29%, and there are fears that this might delay effective response. Mohammed Hirmoge, CCTV, Baidoa.
Well, Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for Monday's attack on African peacekeepers and government vehicles. At least 12 people were killed and 27 others wounded when a suicide car bomber rammed into an African Union convoy south of Mogadishu. It's being reported that 4 Americans and a South American are among the dead.
2 AMISOM soldiers and 2 people from Bancroft were injured in this suicide attack, and more than 12 civilians have been killed. 28 people were also wounded when suicide attackers targeted a convoy of AMISOM forces around Hawa Abdi village.
All right, let's get you more now on that attack. We joined from Mogadishu. CCTV's Mohammed Hirmogari is standing by there for us. Mohammed, we are getting several reports on the attack. Can you give us more details on that?
Beatrice, there are indeed conflicting reports on both the nationalities and the number of people who were killed, the casualties in yesterday's attack. But what was this morning confirmed by both the African Union and the Somali police is that 16 civilians were killed in yesterday's attack and 24 others were injured. What they're also saying is that 2 AMISOM soldiers were wounded in the attack, as well as 2 South African nationals who were working with Bancroft. Bancroft is an American logistics company that works in the base headquarters in Mogadishu Airport. And that they were also under contract from United Nations Mine Action Service, and these 2 were experts on explosive ordnance detection. Apart from that, we have received information that indeed the attacks were 2. They were twin vehicle-borne explosions, both targeting a convoy of the African Union, a supply convoy. And in part of the supply convoy were fuel tankers, and we understand, whereas the supply convoys, African Union convoys, are armored personnel carriers and cannot be penetrated by explosion, probably the information that we are receiving is that the attackers were targeting the fuel tankers that are, in military terms, they call soft skin, and that can be penetrated by the explosion. But the info that we are receiving is that the attackers, both of them, missed the fuel tankers and hit the AMISOM armored Casper. And along that, there came some minibuses, local minibuses that were carrying civilians, public service vehicles, and that is where most of the casualties came from. As we know, Al-Shabaab as well claimed responsibility, saying it is just the beginning of their revenge attacks that they had vowed earlier this week. All right, Mohammed Hirmoge for us there in Mogadishu. Thank you. Let's now bring you other stories we are following for you at this hour. Residents in South Sudan's capital, Juba, are using tradition and dance to send out a message that things are slowly getting back to normal in their country that has been at war for the last 9 months. Kofam Ranger tells us more.
Song and dance, and they come here in huge numbers, the young and the old, from the various tribes in South Sudan. It's a perfect place to showcase their culture.
We are open, we invite everybody to come and enjoy this kind of dance, and we allow everybody to learn if you are not learning, and we are always happy on this day.
They normally gather here every Sunday evening for the event. However, for some time, this had not been happening, thanks to the division and tension that came with the 9-month conflict that has been facing the country. And now, they are back.
It's not just about showcasing their culture. Many here say it's also one of the ways to show the people and the world out there that things are getting back to normal in South Sudan.
Come back. There is a sense of happiness. Traditions are being brought up, and also cultures are in practice. So there's no need of you there hiding in Kikuyu land, hiding in Uganda land, hiding in America is zero. Come back to Sherkat, especially in Juba here. Sherkat is free, everywhere is free. Come to board where it is in abundance. There is freedom in South Sudan. There is enough peace, unity, and coexistence.
Everything is okay. Not stepping the Sudan is safe. Somebody tell us North Sudan is safe, is according to him. But our life, our Sudan is okay. Yeah, that is we hands. That is we dance. What is not serving, we cannot dance.
We just run to Uganda, to Kenya, and then we come back. You may not be scared because it's your own country. So though you are in Uganda, in Kenya, I'm passing my regard to you that you need to come back.
The conflict may not have been completely resolved, but many here hope the leadership will come together and settle their political differences. And with that, the party goes on and on until nightfall. Kofam Renje, CCTV, Juba, South Sudan.
And at 20 minutes past the hour, we'll take a short break and come back with the business headlines. Here it is. A likely sigh of relief from investors as Tanzania decides to hold a review of mining contracts. Tanzania will no longer be reviewing mining and gas contracts. The country's tax authority last week announced it would but has now backed out of that decision after apparently rattling investors. The authority wanted technical assistance to renegotiate mining development and energy production sharing agreements, and the move could have seen the workload of the Ministry of Energy and Minerals more than double. Investors responded by complaining about shifting goalposts when it comes to state contracts. Tanzania is Africa's fourth largest gold producer and has recently discovered massive gas reserves. Zimbabwe's motor vehicle industry used to be a vibrant one, but the country produced thousands of cars a year and employed thousands of locals. But the introduction of cheaper second-hand imports from countries like Japan is pushing local assemblers to the brink. Farai Mwakutuya has that story.
In the heydays, 1 in every 3 cars on Zimbabwe's roads was locally assembled. I'm in downtown Harare at one of the parking lots to put that theory to the test and find out what the numbers are today. Well, there are probably about 120 vehicles parked here, and out of those I managed to count just 4 that are locally assembled.
It's a reflection of the hard times. Willowvale Mazda Motor Industries is one of the biggest casualties. This factory once housed more than 850 employees and churned out 40 vehicles a month. But today, the machines have fallen silent. The company blames government policy, which lowered duties on both new and second-hand imports, rendering local players uncompetitive. They have been overrun by used car dealers that have mushroomed everywhere. The economic hardships have forced many to opt for cheaper, used cars which cost as little as $2,000, a fraction of the cost of the cheapest locally assembled entry-level vehicle at $11,000. A local dealer I spoke to says customers are after more flexible terms and trade-in options.
A farmer, somebody from Toko, you'd come, you want to buy a car, you want a car maybe for 4,000, and you come here, you say, no, I've got $1,500, but I've got kettles there at my home, and then we can value those kettles, and then we know we'll take to the people from who have got some butcheries and who want the cars with the cows. We'll just evaluate, and then we'll complete the transaction.
Willowvale wants government to come to the rescue by banning imports, as was done in neighboring South Africa.
We have to do the same, otherwise we might as well forget about this the motor industry here in Zimbabwe. We just become shopkeepers.
They have found an ally in a pressure group that is agitating for local procurement, starting with government.
There is a bit of traction on the government side. Like, you know that the government had to, after we made quite a bit of noise about the decision to buy parliamentarians, Ford Rangers from South Africa, government realized its own responsibilities, and now they then issued a directive to all parastatals and government departments that they must procure locally assembled vehicles.
A ban on imported vehicles could have some unintended consequences. Government revenue is likely to take a hit from a loss of duties charged on more than 60,000 grey imports per year. But it's a bitter pill worth swallowing.
There's no gain without pain, right? We're going to have to endure some pain if we want to see something good happening in our country.
Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Time now for a quick look at the sports news. Your headline. In your 2015 AFCON qualifier news, Algeria prepare to take on Mali. Well, let's begin with your AFCON qualifier news. And Algeria have been training ahead of their qualifier against Mali. Algeria is currently Africa's top-ranked team and participated in the World Cup. The Mali match, though, will be their second in less than a week. Algeria beat host Ethiopia 2-1 at the weekend and are now second in Group B on goal difference. Mali won at home 2-0 against Malawi, and that's despite the dismissal of goalkeeper Mamadou Samassa. Mali arguably poses Algeria's biggest test in the group. Algeria's new head coach Christian Goukov will be under pressure not to slip up at home in the 40,000 capacity stadium in Blida.
The last match was very difficult, but we managed to win our first away match. We will finish our first task and win 3 points at home.
It's all about mental readiness when you meet other African teams. We know our abilities. We are physically and technically ready, but it's all about being ready mentally.
Croatia's Marin Cilic has been crowned the US Open champion in New York. He beat Japan's Kei Nishikori 6-3, 6-3 and 6-3. And that comes just 1 year after a doping ban kept the tennis star out of the year's final Grand Slam. The big serving Croatian wore down his Japanese opponent in just under 2 hours. It was the first Grand Slam final for both men, but Cilic dominated from the start, blasting 17 aces versus his opponents too. The Croatian sped through the opening set in just 33 minutes and, despite a fight back from Nishikori in the second, still powered through. Cilic becomes the first Croatian to win a Grand Slam title since his coach in 2001.
I think he has brought something special to me, especially Goran. The most important thing that he brought to me was joy in tennis and always having fun. And I think I enjoyed my best tennis over here and played the best ever in my life.
And we leave it there on this edition of Africa Live. Thank you for joining us. I return at 1700 GMT for another edition. But for me and the team here in Nairobi, goodbye.